on May 23rd at 7 o'clock. And the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Towns of Durham and Middlefield, that a district meeting of Regional School District 13 of the state of Connecticut will be held on Monday, May 23rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Julian Thayer Auditorium at Coggins Regional High School, 135 Pickett Lane, Durham, Connecticut, for the following purpose: to present the amended proposed budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as prepared by Regional School District 13 Board of Education. The moderator shall adjourn the district meeting at its conclusion, and the budget shall be submitted to a vote upon the voting tabulators in the district member towns of Durham and Middlefield on Tuesday, May 24th, 2022, in accordance with Section 10-51 of the Connecticut General Statutes, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. under the following heading. 8 p.m., sorry. Shall the proposed budget of $37,915,970 for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as prepared and presented by the Regional School District 13 Board of Education be approved. Those in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed shall vote no. Voting will be at the following poll places: Town of Durham, Coggins Regional High School, 135 Pickett Lane, Durham, Connecticut; Town of Middlefield, Middlefield Community Center, 405 Main Street, Middlefield, Connecticut. Copies of the proposed budget will be on file and available for public inspection in the town clerk offices in Durham and Middlefield at least 5 days prior to the district meeting. Dated May 11, 2022, Lucy R. Petrella, Chairman, Regional School District 13 Board of Education. Return of the call. Return is hereby made that the undersigned on the 13th day of May 2022 caused to be posted on the public signposts in the towns of Durham and Middlefield a written warning by the Board of Education, and on the 13th day of May 2022 caused to be published in the Hartford Courant, a newspaper having a circulation in the town of Durham and Middlefield, warning of the district meeting on the education budget to be held the 23rd day of May 2022 with the referendum vote on the education budget on the 24th of May 2022. Lucy R. Petrella, Chairman, Regional School District 13 Board of Education. The next order of business is to vote on a moderator. Do we have a nomination for moderator? I nominate Norm Hicks.
I second.
We have a motion for Norm Hicks and a second. Are there any other nominations? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Norm. It's yours. Careful the wire. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you all very much. You're welcome to sit closer if you like, so I can see you, but I guess it really doesn't matter. We'll begin. Lucy has a brief statement or a brief overview that she would like to present, so I'll turn it over to Chairman Petrella. Lucy?
Okay, when you came in, there was a handout. It's a double-sided handout. If you don't have a copy, please pick one up. I'm going to just basically touch on three areas briefly. First of all, the first area is a comparison of the proposed budget from the first referendum, which failed, and then the revised budget amount
Then I'm going to go over the major changes from the proposed to the revised, and then also talking about, yeah, that's it, sorry. The proposed budget originally that went to referendum was $38,489,206, which represented a 3.96% increase from the 2021-2022 budget. When the referendum failed, the board revised the budget. The budget is now $37,915,970, which represents a 2.41% increase from 2021-2022. The major changes that were made in the budget were, we had a slight increase in our updated fuel pricing, which came to $22,291. We had a final health insurance rate, which was actually represented an increase of $150,000. The field house funding was moved to capital reserve, so there was no net impact. And staff positions were reduced, resulting in a net savings of $745,527. I'm going to just give a brief staff reduction summary, but then I'm going to have Kim tell a little bit about what the benefits are of having the field house funding in the capital reserve. And I will also ask the superintendent to just go over the staff reductions and the impact or lack thereof on the cuts. So I'm going to have Kim, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the capital, moving the field house to the capital reserve. Before Kim gets up, I think it's important to note that the funding of the capital has always been a concern, because in the past, the most that the regional school districts could put into capital was approximately 1% of the budget. Last year, that was changed to 2%. Back in the 2021-22 budget, which had already been adopted, the present one, we funded our capital at 0.97%. Maximum we could put in was 1%. This year's budget, which we're working on now, the superintendent's capital funding was 1.91%. The board then made an adjustment in the budget, and we proposed a 1.4% in the capital. With the changes that we have just made by moving the field house into the capital, we are now funding our capital budget at 1.89%, which is pretty close to the 2% maximum that we're able to put in.
The difference between budgeting the field house in the operating budget is that the operating budget spans 1 year and 1 year only. So if the expenses or the project is not started or encumbered in that year, or no later really than July through September of the following year, then that money reverts back to the general fund. It is no longer available to be used at all, without another budget round where it's then appropriated again. If it's moved into capital reserve, that's an ongoing fund. It is capped at 2% of your budget, and what happens is the money stays in there until the project is done. You can add to it each year with the 2% cap, and if you complete the project during a cycle and there's money that's left over, then that money can be allocated through board vote to another project. If you cancel the project and decide not to do that, then that money is returned to the general fund by board vote, and at that point, that is then returned to the fund balance at the end of the year. So there's a little bit more flexibility. There's not a rush. I know some of the concerns have been that we don't have the most up-to-date pricing, and there's some talk about what would be an appropriate structure there. So that would afford us some time to save and also vet those options. And if it were going to be over a little bit of savings over the next couple of years, then affords the district the ability to do that.
want me to, okay. Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so Lucy really went over the changes to the budget. There's been a lot of interest, and rightfully so, in the 10.5 full-time equivalent positions that we've recommended reducing in this budget. Some of you follow our budget process very diligently, and others maybe just kind of coming in at the end. We had talked about early on how the enrollment's been declining and how we need to have a comprehensive strategy to right-size our employee force, and how difficult that can be, especially since we haven't done that historically, and we also are coming out of a pandemic where it was very difficult to know exactly what staff we would need. But you know, we heard the community loud and clear from the failed referendum, and this was a theme that echoed from many individuals and groups. This reluctance rather to take on the declining enrollment as it applied to the employees of the district is something that we had to get a handle on. So we had planned to do that next fall. We're doing it now because we need to get this budget across the finish line. So it's 10.5 positions, and looking at where we've been historically, and also just looking at and working with our administrators on programming and class sizes, we wanted to make these reductions in a very strategic way so that we weren't limiting offerings for our learners. And as it turns out, 9.5 of the 10.5 positions came at the secondary level, either from this campus or from Strong Middle School. And English, math, technology, world language, library media, at the high school, English language arts, math and science. At the middle school, we also had some tutor positions at the middle school that really aren't even filled at this point, and so that was kind of, not that we don't think they're important, but positions that we've been living without because we couldn't fill them. And then the library media piece, where we're reducing 50% at the high school and the middle school, is really just a reflection of the fact that we've invested quite significantly in technology. And again, I'm not trying to judge anybody's age in the room, but you know, when I went to school, libraries were the source of all of the information, and now our learners have that on their phones, on the Chromebooks that we issue them. And so the dynamic has changed, and we feel like we can support this, still keep the libraries open, still let them check out books and do all of those things. We've also got a security position at the high school that we feel like in this situation we can do without. We still have a school resource officer, and we feel like with that position and the other staff that we have at the high school and in the district that we can be okay in that. And the only position that is coming out with this recommendation at the elementary is a science specialist, so not a classroom teacher, but somebody that worked with all of the elementary schools to support science, and that work is going to have to be picked up by other individuals who will do that. The last thing I'll say, though, if you didn't watch our meeting when I kind of went over this, but you've probably heard me say it a lot, I need to say it again, is that one of the reasons we cannot recognize more reductions at the elementary schools because we're on 3 campuses. We have been trying for years to reduce from 3 elementary schools to 2, and the community's not given us permission to do that. If we were able to do that, we could recognize not just efficiencies, but I think we could actually provide a better educational product to our learners by consolidating the staff resources that we have onto 2 campuses, and we certainly are still in the process of trying to make that happen, but that won't happen for this budget cycle, so that's why it looks so skewed to the secondary level. The other thing I think it's important to point out is through the careful work of our administrative team, we're not cutting any programs by these reductions. What we're essentially doing is taking areas where class sizes were smaller and making them larger. And I think that's appropriate given what the community has said to us. And that's really kind of the quick summary of that. And anything else you wanted me to share, Lucy, or is that?
No, I think
Okay, and we can certainly answer questions once we get to the Q&A about any of that.
Okay, that's the end of our presentation.
Oh, can I say one more thing too? I apologize. I think it bears saying, we are making every effort with these reductions, if they happen, to use early retirement incentives and other means so that people don't necessarily lose their jobs. We can't guarantee that, but I don't want anyone to think that we don't understand how hard that would be on the individuals who might lose their jobs in such a reduction.
Okay, thank you for those words. And at this point, we'll open this up to questions or clarifications. I would ask once again that you step up to the microphone so everyone can hear you. And since we do not have a reporter here tonight, that you state your name and perhaps the town you're from so that can be entered into the minutes. So I will open it up to questions or clarifications. Danya.
Danya Viola, Durham. Dr. Shook, I like what I heard. Not being any impediment to student gains with the plan that you described. I did follow one of the workshops, I guess it was the May 10th one that was posted with the minutes, but I did communicate with the chairwoman here of the board, and unfortunately, as of even today, the May 11th formal meeting, regular meeting, was not posted yet in minutes, and I find that very poor. We've had more timely reporting previously. Within the next 3 to 5 days, we've heard what transpired if we weren't in attendance. And it's unfortunate with this meeting tonight, we neither got the minutes from the proposal moving forward with this sheet showing here, nor did any mailing come out to the public at large, the communities you serve, which we are used to getting as a reminder of the vote for the second time around, because it does bring people out. And there wasn't anything into the notice for the Town Times either for today's, tomorrow's referendum. So I just think that, have to kind of get a little bit more diligent about what's happening in regards to communication. Because when it's been said time and again over the past years, we're going in the wrong direction. And I want to publicly thank Ms. Booth for having served on the board. I was disappointed that I couldn't vote for you again, but thank you. And furthermore, I do support your putting in for the field house the monies. I think it's needed. I don't like the picture of a hose delivering water to any athletes, whether they're ours or someone else's. I don't know if you plan to use any of that $180,000 that you're putting aside in this budget in the upcoming year. I would like to see something moving forward on it if we're going to put that kind of money in, though. So thank you for doing it to capital, maybe eases the crunch. And other than that, I hear where you're coming from in retirements. That's very compassionate call, and kind of says what kind of people that you have here to compensate for shortfalls sometimes that, no one's perfect. We're all working at it. But I think the delivery for what you offer is pretty darn good. I still have one thing, though, that gnaws at me, and that is, I think we have too many, oh my, I'm losing it, counselors at the high school. I really think that is unnecessary. A director, an assistant, and 3 others or something. So I think that's something that really, you know, I'm not trying to take somebody's job. That's not my purpose. It's just that you can also be overboard. And because you keep the status quo, doesn't mean it's right. But again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next question? Char.
Good evening, Richard Adams, Middlefield. I used to attend a lot of these meetings over the years. This hall used to be packed to the gills out the doors because we voted here. And even when we didn't, when we changed to hearings, we had heavy attendance. Now there's nobody. I'm not going to pretend that I've been paying close attention this year, but I'm puzzled that I haven't seen much of anything in writing. I mean, we got this was already published, and I think it's the same one. It has not changed, right? It's the same one that we got online. And one thing it doesn't do, it doesn't show comparison between the defeated budget and the new one in paper. So there's no way to compare. You can't go down line by line and see. Now, I've heard the presentation tonight, but unless I took a lot of detailed notes, I couldn't tell anybody what you said. And I'm not sure how you propose to communicate this to those hundreds of people, number one, who didn't vote at all the last time, and number two, who voted against the budget, as to just what it is that you're now proposing compared to what you proposed before. So I don't know if there's anything you have to say about that, but I'm just left kind of flabbergasted that there's just nothing.
Anybody like to comment on that, or?
I think timeline-wise, I don't know if Bob's on the line or even this year or Lucy, when the second referendum vote went, was there normally something sent in the mail? Or was the time frame not?
You guys speak it.
Was the time frame not quick enough? Is that why we didn't send a mailer? We didn't have
That's
enough.
correct. It's a quick
Okay.
turnaround time. And also, it's not required by state statute, which it is for the first round.
Okay. And I do know that, I'm not sure about Middlefield, but I know Durham had sent it out through email, and I did ask them to send it out again. But we could reach out to make sure that people know to vote tomorrow, and the link to the website as well.
Okay, thank you. Next. I can't.
Blinded by the light there.
Yeah, it's like,
Claire?
Trusso Blatz from Durham, and I apologize because I did miss the intro, so I know you had it. But I actually do have a quick look at what's changed. And I'm not convinced, like, I don't know where you're going with the field house and the funding for the capital reserves. I assume that's setting the money aside so the net impact is zero, but you aren't gonna work on it this year? Because my biggest concern is that it's the worst time to be building, and if it's something that can be delayed, it's just the worst time to be building, and we all know that. So the cost is gonna be much higher today than it will be when inflation catches up and the supply goes up, you know. So I think you gotta think about that. I'm also a little concerned that I see the staffing of the 10 people, and I understand it is, once again, it's hitting the regular ed kids, and I don't know if that's because there's less class size. I mean, it's not impacting the class size by reducing this number of the teachers, or is it the only way you really could have gone is impacting the regular ed kids? And I'm not speaking against special ed, but I'm just saying it is the biggest cost that we have of our education. And I just, without seeing any of that, I just am questioning why.
You want me to take a shot at that?
be my guest, Doug.
When it comes to special ed staffing, that is largely driven by the individualized education plans, or IEPs, or Section 504 under the American Disabilities Act. And so That staffing is constantly in a state of flux. I think if Jen Keene were here, she would tell us that she's probably a bit understaffed based on the needs, the growing needs of identifying children, and it's very difficult to keep up with. So it wasn't so much that we didn't look at special education. We looked at everything. It was just that the way to do this and make it have the least impact on programming was to look at the secondary and the general education, where the class sizes in many cases are quite low, even compared to the elementary level. And so I think certainly we didn't plan to do this in this cycle, but once we went to our administrative team and said, how can we do it, this was deemed to be the way that would have the least impact on our over educational programming, because it doesn't cut any programs.
Okay.
And I
Yes.
can answer on the, so when it came to the field house, moving it to capital, I think you missed the first part of this. Yeah, no, it's no problem. So moving that to capital allowed us to really take a good hard look at the building committee, having take a look at this and really get it vetted out. It also didn't tie us to getting it done in 1 year, whether that was saving for it or if it just doesn't seem feasible, that money can stay in capital and go to another project. It really seemed like the only responsible way to do it. Keeping it tied to 1 year is really tough right now, especially with supplies and how everything's going with inflation. Go ahead.
That is correct. Will be set aside, can be used in future years, and if the project is canceled for whatever reason, those funds can revert back to the general fund and then back to the fund balance at the end of the year.
All right, thank you. Next speaker? Next call? Oh, Carl.
Excuse me. Carl Stout, Durham. I want to thank the board for the cuts, but it's not enough. Our expenses in this budget are way out of hand. We cut a building, or we cut staff, but we saved a building. Our priorities are a little bit out of whack, as far as I'm concerned. The building is not needed for educational purposes that I can see. Is there a need for some water fountains out there? Yes, they have frost-proof ones. You don't need to spend $100,000, several $100,000 building to have a water fountain. Bathrooms? Yes. I got nothing against bathrooms. But do we need to build a several $100,000 building for bathrooms that are going to sit there the majority of the time? The Durham Fair, when they have excess crowd coming in, they bring in portalettes. I mean, we need to look at the cost of what's going on here right now. And I appreciate what the Board of Ed has put into this, but we need to really look at this whole situation. This field house is really a big want, it's a big luxury, and this town cannot afford it right now, as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of other people feel the same way. One comment was made to me, we put bricks over books. In other words, we prioritize a building against books. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Anyone else? Is that Phil? I can't see who it is. It is.
Good evening, Phil Muzzio from Durham. Just as you look into the next year and the year after that and the year after that, has the board come up with any plan as to how they're going to deal with Lyman, the building? And does the board have, or is it in the works to develop a plan to address the declining enrollment? Because, you know, it's fine to hear that there's no program cuts and it's 10.5 FTEs, et cetera, but what about next year? What about the year after? I mean, I just don't feel that we can, with issues like Lyman and issues like declining enrollment, we can do it a year at a time. I think that I recommend that the board look at a 5-year plan. You know, the projections so far for the enrollment have been pretty accurate. So if you use that going out, why can't you develop a more long-term plan that can be presented over a period of time to the town? And then at least we know the direction, we know the steps, we know what to expect in next year's budget and the year after budget. You're not going to hit it exactly, but we'll know that, okay, these kind of expenses are going up, these kind of expenses are going down. Here's the trajectory of our next 5 years in terms of expenses, and I think that makes it a lot easier to handle the year budget each time it comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
I would just like to say that very definitely that the building utilizations and the reorganization are definitely on the table, and I believe that it won't be too long before there will be some proposals that will be put out to the community for their input.
Is there anyone else? Teresa, before I get to you? Okay, Teresa.
Just a comment on the prior comment. I'm shocked that there's only 20 people here or 10 people. I really am, because I do think it's a big vote. But I also did open up the Town Times and was expecting something, like some discussion about it. It is our vote. It is still a paper that everybody does open up. They talk about it. And if parents want something and they want this to be voted in, like, I feel like I'm out of it. I've been out of it for several years, but I do come to the town meetings, and to see this place packed to elect one of you guys, and then when it comes to the biggest thing, which is understanding how our education is getting deployed, there's nobody. We're a little distraught right now. So I do believe in the communication, and I think if we can get the parents talking their side and then the town people talking their side, and we can understand it, it makes it a lot easier to kind of walk into the polls. So just a thought.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? All right, Carl, go ahead.
Carl Stelp, Durham. I forgot to make my last comment was, if this field house really start getting serious about it, what have you, rather than just being a decision made by the board, it should be put out as a referendum so that both towns have a say. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think that we are probably finished with the public portion of the meeting, and therefore I will declare that comments are closed. A reminder that polls are open tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. The item to be voted on is, shall the proposed budget of $37,915,970 for the 22-23 fiscal year is prepared and presented by the Regional Board of Education be approved. And Durham will be voting in Caughachog Regional High School, and the town of Middlefield will be at the Community Center. At this time, I declare that we are adjourned, and we will adjourn until 6 a.m. for the vote. Thank you all very much this evening.
Good job.